A Nightmare on Elm Street made a significant contribution to pop culture and is well known for its unique concept of dream-based killings and the charismatic villain named Freddy Krueger. In this video I'll thoroughly reveal to you the story of this guy, as well as the director's idea underlying this film. The late 70s and the early 80s were challenging times in US history. Economic decline, a sharp increase in crime, and an era of permissiveness prevailed. The traditional concept of family was falling apart before everyone's eyes, and new opportunities were opening up for women. Traditional marriage was gradually being replaced by cohabitation, and there were increasing numbers of single-parent families. The divorce rate was at an all-time high. At the same time, politics leaned conservative. Public speeches often condemned modern trends like extramarital affairs. An ideological chasm seemed to form between adults and their children. All of these, in one way or another, found its reflection in the art of the time. The main characters in A Nightmare on Elm Street are ordinary American kids, representatives of the middle class. They have strained relationships with their parents, and some come from broken families. Nancy's mother is divorced and at odds with her ex-husband. After leaving the family, her father became a workaholic. His approach to parenting differs from Nancy's mother's. He mostly ignores his daughter, disregards her requests, and without hesitation uses Nancy as bait to catch a murder suspect.
Me.
Nancy's mother is overprotective, prioritizing her child's external safety above all else, which ultimately turns their house into a fortress with steel bars on the windows. Nancy's mother smokes and struggles with alcohol, problems that worsen as the film progresses. This is her way to suppressing emotions and silencing unpleasant memories. Tina's mother has also been raising her daughter alone for over a decade. She gets involved with questionable men and spends time with them in Las Vegas, ignoring her daughter's problems. After Tina has a nightmare, her mother is too busy rushing to bed with her latest boyfriend to listen to her. Tina has partially followed in her mother's footsteps by getting involved with Rod, a problematic and even dangerous teenager. He has been in trouble with the law for fighting drugs and pulling out a knife at any opportunity. We don't learn about Rod's family, but the fact that he doesn't turn to his parents for help after Tina's murder speaks volumes. Glenn's parents also show little interest in raising their son. His mother ignores his plans to stay up late watching erotic shows, and his father wants to shield him from contact with his girlfriend. What unites all the parents in the film is their neglect of their children. Their parenting efforts are reduced to stating prohibitions and giving instructions. In slasher films, it is common for adults to be absent from the story. Screenwriters often remove them to leave teenagers alone with the danger. A Nightmare on Elm Street goes much further in this regard. The parents here haven't just neglected their children's problems. Actually, they are the sole reason for the nightmare that is happening to them. If you call them the primary source of the evil the teenagers face in this film, you wouldn't be far from the truth. It is the parents who are responsible for creating of Freddy Krueger. This man was accused of killing 20 children but wasn't imprisoned due to a bureaucratic error. A group of adults took justice into their own hands, tracking him to an abandoned boiler room where he tortured the children. The facility was burned to the ground with Freddy trapped inside. It appears that Nancy's mother was the one who stuck the match and threw it into the fuel, as she keeps a sinister trophy.
But he can't get you now. He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
20 years later, Freddy inexplicably returned in a supernatural form. This time, the parents are powerless to protect their beloved children from him. Krueger visits teenagers in their dreams, and if they die there, they die in real life as well. Adults cannot help the teenagers in their dreams, and this is undoubtedly terrifying. But what's even scarier is that they are just as useless in the real world, and their actions often worsen the situation. It's important to remember that all these children remember the rhyme from their childhood featuring the killer's name.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, they're at your door.
They know that Freddy poses a danger and that it's worth keeping their doors locked at home. But beyond that, they know nothing about this man. The characters don't know that Freddy was a real person who worked at this school and who raped and killed children. The parents turned Freddy Krueger into a monster capable of killing in dreams, not when they killed them, but through their actions after his death. The famous song sung by the girls Jumping Rope isn't just a nursery rhyme, it's a lullaby sung by parents over their children's cribs to scare them into obedience. Look at the situation through the eyes of the parents. They killed a maniac and pedophile with their own hands, so they can tell their children the whole truth about him. At the same time, they couldn't completely hide what happened, because they were terrified of repeat of the events. How could they influence their children in such a situation? How could they instill fear in them to prevent them from interaction with strangers or wandering into abandoned boiler rooms? Parents turned Freddy from a real person into a mythical being and implanted this idea into their children's minds. He became something faceless, devoid of history or any human qualities. His cruelty was taken to the extreme, and over time his image was supplemented with supernatural features. Krueger isn't a vengeful spirit that appears overnight. He was gradually created over the years by parents in their children's mind. Robert Englund, who portrayed Freddy, said that the character represents the neglect of the children by their apathetic parents and their subconscious fears. Now we will figure out exactly how this works, but first remember that Freddy Krueger is first and foremost the boogeyman. This is what Nancy calls him after meeting him in a dream.
Sounds like a real boogeyman. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
The girl immediately understood that she was dealing with, and several times during the film she called Freddy exactly that.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
No. Midnight. Baseball bats and boogeyman.
The boogeyman is a mythical creature used by parents to bully children in hopes of getting desired behavior from them. The boogeyman is to a child what the devil is to an adult. Punishes for disobedience and condemns to suffering. In some countries, such as Germany, the boogeyman is known as Krampus and is in many ways one with the devil. In slasher films of the time, teenagers were often killed by maniacs immediately after doing obscene things, smoking weed, drinking or having sex. But Freddy Krueger punishes children for the sins of their parents. This makes him even more similar to the boogeyman and God from the Old Testament.
But he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. But let us recall also our Lord's admonition, that we judge not, lest we be judged.
The maniac grabs his victims in their sleep and drags them straight to hell, which in the film is presented in the form of a boiler room with plenty of fire and steams. All his victims, without exception, ended up here. Each death was accompanied by a dive downwards. Tina is taken to the boiler room by Freddy in front of her friend. Nancy herself also repeatedly goes underground or drowns. The same thing happens happened to Glenn and Nancy's mother. The exception is Rod, who goes to hell like any other suicide. In upbringing, a key role is played by an authoritative image, following whose instructions the child avoids danger and develops. We're talking not only about parents, but also about teachers at school, relatives or priests in the church that the child attends. Both the boogeyman and God as also a kind of authority, living in the heads of children and observing their behavior when their parents are not around. Look at Tina's situation. She's a teenager who, as a schoolgirl, already has an intense sex life. Tina grew up in a religious family, and therefore it is reasonable to assume that she knows that sex in her case is a sin and that she will be punished. But this does not stop the girl. Having sex with Rod on her mother's bed in her absence, Tina is only worried that she will find out about it. The real danger of early sex lies, say, in the risk of early pregnancy or the chance of contracting disease, but it is unlikely that a girl from a conservative family received adequate sex education. The mother restrained the girl only with the help of her authority and God, with the help of prohibitions and taboos. So Freddy Krueger is the collective image in a child's head of these kinds of educational measures. Tina's mother went to Sin City for a couple of days to drink and have fun, leaving her daughter alone with nightmares. Friends came to support Tina, Glenn and Nancy. Later she's joined by Rod, who showed up uninvited. The girl was not entirely happy to see him, did not resist the pressure for long, and instantly found herself in bed, naked under the blanket. Glenn is trying to hit on Nancy at this time, but she turns him down. It's not hard to guess who Freddy will take it out on tonight. After sex, Rod turns away wrapped in a blanket of a quite interesting colors. This is a small hint about whose image Freddy will use in his educational work. The girl falls asleep. Pebbles are thrown in her window, as if a teenager is calling her to look outside. A little later, during the chase, Krueger changes his form.
Please, God.
This is God.
He kills Tina using her boyfriend and the concept of God, doing so slowly and enjoying the process. The next day, we see her body, but this time in Nancy's dream. She's wrapped in the same body bag in which the police carried her from the crime scene. Freddy drags her straight to hell. We'll see Tina for the last time a little later in the image of the Virgin Mary, who's often depicted in artist paintings stepping on a snake. This emphasizes that Mary has nothing to do with original sin. The whole lump of such snakes fall out of Tina, to the extent that she's rotten from the inside with sins. Freddy demonstrates the result of his re-education, which he's certainly proud of. Krueger can take any form, a god, a father, or a boyfriend, as in the case of Nancy.
Come to Freddy.
Freddy embodies the threat that parents see, but that their children do not realize or for one reason or another ignore. Tina's mother saw the danger from her bandit boyfriend and the Lord God. The girl did not. It was on their behalf that Tina was killed. Nancy's mom was nervous that her daughter would fall asleep in the bathtub and drown. This means that it is precisely these fears that Freddy will embody.
Don't fall asleep in there. You could drown, you know. It happens all the time.
Freddy can also take the form of any authoritative figure, like the school hallway attendant.
Where's your pass? Screw your pass.
No running in the hallway.
The logic here is the same. Nancy doesn't care if she has a pass, but the school teacher does.
Yeah, I'll go straight home. You'll need a hall pass.
Freddy appears only when the child refuses to listen to adults, when they ignore the danger, when they fail to see it. He's not there to embody children's fear, as is the case with the monster in It, but rather the fears of adults. That's why Krueger first emerges during puberty in adolescence, when parents' fears and their need of control reach their peak. Freddy Krueger represents the image of a maniac in mother's mind when she forbids her child from interacting with strangers on the street. He becomes the pervert boyfriend that a father worries about when he forbids her daughter from dating. He transforms into the devil from grandma's mind, concerned that her granddaughter will sleep before marriage. Freddy Krueger embodies the dark underbelly of parenthood. He appears when parents try to ensure their children remain innocent, always wearing pristine clothes and playing in the backyard, like the girls skipping rope in the film who symbolize innocence. Metaphors of purity are scattered throughout this film, starting from its very first frames. A young girl appears from bright white light, accompanied by a lamp. A Nightmare on Elm Street is above all a story about a loss of innocence, growing up, and the journey from light to darkness. The central theme is reflected in Nancy's arc, as well as in various subtle references sprinkled throughout the film. For instance, during a school lesson behind Nancy, there's a poster for Chekhov's play The Cherry Orchard. The play's main character also bids farewell to her youth, embodied in the image of a garden filled with pleasant childhood memories. The secret of A Nightmare on Elm Street is the loss of innocence. Children lose it on all levels: sex, violence, murder, death, awareness of the shortcomings of their parents, and so on. The inclusion of the street name in the film's title was not by chance. As Freddy himself says in the sequels, every American city has an Elm Street. This suggests that the story depicted in the film is not limited to one specific place, but could happen anywhere in the country. Moreover, many Americans associate Elm Street with a tragic historical event. In an interview with Rolling Stone, director Wes Craven said, "Elm Street is the name of the street that ran past the book depository where Kennedy was shot. To me, it was where the innocent world ended." Freddy's actor Robert Englund also mentioned the Kennedy assassination when speaking to the press. The whole concept of A Nightmare on Elm Street is very symbolic, but Elm Street's also the street that JFK was assassinated on in Dallas. And that's the beginning of our loss of innocence and our distrust of government and our group American paranoia. And Wes was turning that around and making that also the loss of innocence for a generation, and in particular young women. But Elm Street is also the starting point for this entire story. Traces back to the events of 1963, when all America was plunged into a nightmare. Around that time, the concept of stranger danger became widespread, teaching children to avoid interacting with strangers on the streets. Children gradually began to associate unfamiliar adults with danger. An image of frightening stranger handing out candy on the street formed in their minds. Over time, this image was modified, and in the 80s it took on its perhaps most terrifying form due to the sharp increase in crime based on sexual violence. Serial maniacs were discussed around the clock, both on TV and in government offices. This contributed to the public's perception of criminals as monsters deserving of destruction. People like Freddy Krueger turned into impersonal monsters in the public consciousness, devoid of any human traits. They became the embodiment of absolute evil, worthy of divine punishment. These trends also be seen in the slashers film of that era. Maniacs often wore masks, stalked their victims seemingly at all times, and attacked when least expected. filmmakers frequently endowed them with supernatural abilities. Evil was almost impossible to kill. It could dissolve into thin air, and so on. In those years, real rapists was often associated with satanic cults, cannibalism, and other similar fantasies, further blurring the line between reality and fiction. This hysteria also affected children. The image of the boogeyman was distorted. As crimes against minors increased, the figure of the creature in parents' stories increasingly became that of a kidnapper or even a rapist. That fight against sexual crimes was carried out with clumsy methods such as tightening laws, building more prisons, and creating a registry of rapists. Those included in these lists faced persecution and intense monitoring, despite the minimal chance of reoffending, estimated to be around 2 or 5%. Some were wrongfully accused and as a result committed suicide. Did this bring any result? Just like the story in A Nightmare on Elm Street, things only got worse. Many of you might have heard that Wes Craven was inspired to create the film by a story in the Los Angeles Times. The article covered a series of deaths in their sleep of Cambodian teenagers who had fled the brutal regime of Pol Pot. This is where the idea of death in sleep came from, along with the notion that children die from nightmares as a result of their parents' actions in reality. Craven also mentions his father in the context of discussing the film.
I was raised in a fundamentalist Baptist church. Almost all social things of any import were really within the church. And one of the beliefs they had, besides you can't play cards and dance and smoke and drink alcohol, was that you don't go to movies because they're kind of the devil's playground. My father was buried in '45, somewhere around my 6th birthday. The few memories that I have of my father, I was really scared of him. He had an explosive temper, and you had the feeling like he could kill you at any time. It was just, one of those kind of guys.
Of course, the adults in the film were motivated by noble intentions. They wanted to protect the younger generation from a world full of vices and horrors. But in response to the crime committed, they responded in kind. Freddy managed to escape responsibility, but his vigilantes were not punished either. And among these people, let me remind you, there was at least one representative of the law. In attempts to destroy evil, something far more terrible and omnipresent was unconsciously created. The same thing happened in the real world in the USA during those years. The image of a faceless maniac and rapist existed in the minds of children, which ultimately led to their deaths. The information that ultimately saved Nancy in the film was that Freddy Krueger was human. He was not a devil living in hell, but an ordinary school boiler room worker. In our world, a child molester and rapist is not a stranger in black cloak, but in more than 90% of cases, a relative of the victim, a family friend, or another adult close to the child. This person typically holds some form of authority over the child, a school teacher, a daycare worker, a pastor, or even neighbor whom the child sees every day. By destroying evil and hiding the truth, the parents ensured that the next time it returned, their children would be left defenseless. What's truly frightening is that our children are not being raised with the help of truth and enlightenment, but rather with prohibitions and punishments, in an attempt to hide the very truth from them. The director, through his film, says that what happened in the early 80s had nothing to do with solving the problem. It's sweeping the garbage under the carpet, and the descendants will have to clean it up. Only after generations will they have to remove the corpses hidden under it. The only surviving heroine of the film is Nancy. Her journey runs from being an innocent girl to becoming an independent and responsible young woman who, despite lies and hypocrisy, forgives her mother and takes care of her, putting her to bed.
I was just trying to protect you. I didn't see how much you needed to know.
I love you.
Nancy is a woman of action. She's quite intelligent, and every time she encounters Freddy, she tries to gather information about him. Time after time, dressed in battle armor, the girl overcomes her fear, earning a reward each time, a piece of knowledge about her enemy. The key secret, as it turns out, was hidden by her own mother.
You knew about him all this time? And you've been acting like it was something I made up?
The veil of naivety gradually falls from Nancy's eyes. Her cherry orchard, in the form of the fence her boyfriend climbed to get to her, was destroyed by her own mother, and she found herself trapped alone with evil. Nancy lost the support of a boyfriend who didn't take her seriously and was with her only in hopes of finally having sex. The scientist from the sleep clinic and even the law enforcement, including her own father, couldn't help her. Krueger made the girl experience horror, disappointment and despair, and in just a few days she learned more about reality than in all previous years on her life. Ultimately, Nancy figured out Freddy's nature and realized that he wouldn't show herself in the presence of adults. No one could help her face this enemy except herself.
You go downstairs. I'll be there in a minute.
To grow up, each child must face one-on-one the embodiment on their parents' collective fears. Nancy defeats them by bringing them into the real world and realizing their illusory nature. Freddy Krueger is just as fictional as the boogeyman under the bed, the existence of hell, or, for instance, the threat of drawing in the bathtub while asleep.
I know the secret now. This is just a dream. You're not alive. This whole thing is just a dream.
Freddy is defeated and disappears forever from Nancy's mind. Then something inexplicable and curious happens. From the very beginning, the director engages in a small game with the viewer, periodically making us guess where the dream ends and reality begins. All transitions happen seamlessly, and it's worth noting this innovative technique for its time. For example, in the moment with the phone receiver, we are surprised because we didn't expect Nancy to be asleep at that moment. Unknowingly, she falls into a micro-sleep during this scene, which is confirmed in the script. There are several such moments in the film, and by the end it becomes unclear what was real and what wasn't. For us, just as for Nancy, at some point everything merges into one. The girl loses the ability to distinguish when she's sleeping and when she's awake. Reality and nightmare switch places. Having won over Freddy, Nancy finds herself in a dream for the first time in a long period of time. Then, in the director's cut of the film, she simply drives off with her friends in a car. She's presented with a forgotten world of pleasant dreams, bright, innocent, with a slight enchanting mist. This is a place where anything is possible.
Oh, I believe anything is possible.
Here everything is perhaps too perfect. There are no longer bars on Nancy's windows. Her friends are safe and sound, and her mother is seeing her off to school, promising to quit drinking. But sooner or later any dreams ends. Nancy will wake up for the first time in her life and see the real world. In this world, Freddy Krueger does not exist, and the most pain and suffering sometimes comes from the living, from family, loved one, and those who are always close to you. Happy growing up, Nancy, and welcome to the nightmare.